Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I am one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Season 4, Episode 5, Indiscretion. But before we continue, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct. And again, as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we are awesome and we are doing some great things. And we'll get into a lot of that later. Did want to just quickly, briefly mention that, as David said, this is episode 5. Please keep in mind our numbering system is not off, okay? The opener of season 4 was a two-parter, which we treated as one long episode, an episode that is available and you should go listen to right now. But that is why instead of saying episode 6 or whatever, we say episode 5 because technically it's all one thing. Episode 1 and 2 are just one. Okay. So I don't want to throw anybody off. I don't want anybody looking at Wikipedia or anything else and being like, well, actually, it's a no. Be quiet. It was a two-parter episode. Therefore, we're counting it as one. All right. So that's how we're handling this. All right. Let's get that
Yeah,
out there.
yeah,
And we did this way back when. If you go back to the emissary, the very first episode of season 1, we did the same thing there as well. So we're not off. It just makes more sense. It's the tell the whole story. All right. That's how we like to do things.
yeah.
So, as David said, tonight we are talking about the episode Indiscretion, a very interesting episode. We get to see the return of Gul Dukat,
Mm,
man who has not been present for a little bit. I mean, we saw him, briefly in Way of the Warrior, but this is the first time we really get a focus on him, and not just him, but also Cardassian culture, Cardassian life.
yeah.
So,
hmm
find out some good things. But before we dive into all that, since it's been a little bit, David, how has your week been?
It's been good. It's been good. So I watched the show Altered Carbon on Netflix. Have you watched that,
Really?
Perry?
I did. I watched the first season and I really enjoyed it. Second season,
Yes.
not so much.
Yeah.
But
Okay. So I
yes.
haven't watched the second season yet. Just watched season one
All
and
right.
was really happy with it. I really liked it. It was really
Yeah.
good.
I thought it was a great new kind of sci-fi. I don't think I'd ever
Yes.
seen anything like that. And it's been a while since I've seen it. I remember when it first came out. It's a few years old.
2018.
Yeah, I was gonna
2018.
say it's a few years old, and I
Mhm.
remember when it first came out, and I really, really enjoyed it. And then I think I like things like that that have really complex sci-fi, and then there's also like
Yes.
not a whole lot of known actors in it. If
Yeah.
I think it helps me to focus more on the story rather than why so and so is playing whatever particular role.
It's a good point.
You
The
know?
only actor I recognize is the guy who plays the main character, and even his name I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he was in like the Suicide Squad, and he was in the new RoboCop a couple of years ago, but I don't remember the actor's name. Anyway, I just watched it last. Well, it was like this week and last week because I had watched The Peripheral after reading the book The Peripheral, that book and show I'd been mentioning, and I figured out this is a similar kind of futuristic premise. People kind of having the ability to like inhabit bodies that aren't necessarily theirs. So I just decided to watch it and was really surprised. It was a really good show. At least season one was amazing. Again, I haven't seen season two. Apparently, they have a there's like an in universe reason for a change in casting. So I want to
Hmm.
watch season two, but I'm not surprised to hear you say that it's not as good as the first season. I just got the book today, so I do plan on reading
Oh,
the book now.
so
Uh,
let me know, how is it a book series or is it just one book?
So it is a series, but it's a
Okay.
series. It's the Teshi Kovac. It's a Teshi Kovac novel. Kovac novel. So apparently, and again, apparently, season two of the show is like 30 years after season one, and apparently that means that the storylines are very disjointed. The main character is the same, but what's going on is different, as far as I can tell.
Okay. See,
So
I don't
my
know if I recall that from the show or not. If that was
I
a
haven't seen
point
season
they
two, so
made.
I may be wrong. I may be wrong, but my understanding is, with what I'm thinking, and I may be totally wrong, is that there are three books in the series so far, but I don't know that they are interconnected any more than it's the main character is the same, and the setting, or at least the premise behind the technology of this futuristic world, is the same. I don't know that it. how much
Okay.
plot from book to book progresses. Not like The Expanse, where like you basically have a progression, book to book, or if it's just like kind of disjointed. The setting is the same, the main character is the same, and that's it. So I'm curious
Okay.
to see how that goes. But seeing as how the show was great, I'm like, I want to read the book now. I didn't even know there was a book. I
Yeah, I
just,
didn't either. I didn't either. I was gonna say, like, let me know after you finish that first book there what you think of it because,
yeah,
like I said, I really enjoyed the first season,
yeah,
and I would love to see, kind of like we're doing with the Expanse. I would love to see like how things changed a bit, and how things kind of continue on as
right.
well. So,
And I just want to say it again. The show was surprisingly good. I was by
yes,
the
I
end,
I,
I
I will
was like,
absolutely agree.
I
Hmm.
was like, oh my gosh, this was really good. It was one of those like as it's ending, like the season is ending, and all of the pieces are falling together, and the characters were coming together, and
Hmm.
just the revelation of everything. There were so many great twists, like plot twists, but not forced. They were. I don't want to say any more than that. If you haven't watched Altered Carbon season one, I recommend it.
Yeah. I
That's
may
all I gotta
actually
say.
go back and take another look, another pass at season two because now that we talk about it, I don't think that I actually finished it. I remember not enjoying it when it was first getting started, which was upsetting to me because the new actor in the role
Anthony
was
Mackie.
Anthony Mackie, and I really like him. And I was just like, I was actually so excited when I heard he was going to be in season two of the show because
Right.
I know what a good actor he is, and so I was like, okay, I was looking forward to seeing what he brought to it, and then it wasn't right somehow. So I don't think I actually finished it. So maybe it's one of those you kind of have to like get through a couple of episodes and then it will start to pick up.
Yeah.
Maybe I just need to give it another chance. I don't know, but yeah, I remember thinking the same thing. I thought that the storyline was great. The level of complexity they were giving me for the overall story was great. I liked the actors because like I said, they weren't particularly famous, or at least they weren't on my radar, I should say. So it allowed me to kind of just really look at them as actors and their characters and not be
Right.
like, oh well, so and so shouldn't be playing this role and all that other kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And just really, go with what they were giving. And I
Right.
think it was really good. I think we kind of miss that sometimes when we have like big named actors attached to certain stories. You get so distracted by who is playing what that it's hard to um really focus on what the story is they're giving you. I feel like there's very few actors that are able to really overcome that. And of course, the only one in my head that I think successfully does it is Tom Hanks. I think that he's great. And
Mhm.
maybe that's why he's in so many things because he has an ability, at least to me, of even though I know it's Tom Hanks in whatever role, he does such a great job portraying the characters that you kind of that drops away a bit.
Yeah,
And
he embodies his characters really
yeah,
nicely. Yeah.
you're less impressed with Tom Hanks in the role, and it's more like, man, that was a great story.
Yeah.
Um, Another
Yeah.
actor I think who did that, and it's unfortunate that he did what he did,
I know who you're
is
gonna say.
Kevin
Yeah.
Spacey.
Yep.
Yeah,
Kevin
I
Spacey.
I always
Yeah.
thought Kevin Spacey was a great character actor. One of the few,
Yeah.
and it's upsetting that he did what he did and messed himself up. So
Yeah.
but yeah, those two really do stand out in my mind as like great top tier character actors. And yeah, they're just really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, as for me, I have really just been doing nothing but Trek and Trek related stuff. Obviously, season three of Picard is almost over. As of this broadcast, we will only actually by the time people hear this episode, the show will be over. The
Well,
season
unless
will
they
be over.
watch on YouTube, but yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Unless you're watching on YouTube with us tonight, later on, whatever, then yeah, you guys know we have a week. We just had the release of episode 9, episode 10, the final episode comes out next week or whatever. But since David hasn't watched any of it, there's not much I am willing to say other than I have immensely enjoyed this season. Like it's wonderful. The nostalgia, I don't feel like the nostalgia aspects of it are overly done. I don't feel like the story has really like lost its way or anything like that. I think they've done a great job of building from week to week to week. Even the episode, like, 'cause there's one episode that people do say is, weaker than the other ones. And it is a bit of a slower episode, but it works. It works for everything else that's going on in the other episodes you've watched so far and the ones that come after it. So like it doesn't hurt anything at all. And I absolutely adored the last episode, episode 9. It was everything. It was all the things that you were really kind of needing them to do and to have before going into the final episode of the show. So I'm really excited about episode 10. Kind of sad
Mm,
because that means it'll be over.
mm.
Um Now, of course, there's murmurings about potential spin-offs. We've talked about this a lot, spin-offs, which ones are gonna, happen, which ones aren't, and all that kind of stuff. It's clear to me already that there is going to be a spin-off from Picard. What it's going to entail, who's going to be involved in it, that is literally anyone's guess. I feel like Patrick Stewart is done. I feel like this was it for him. Um, and kind of telling the story of Picard the way he wanted to tell it. I think that's what this whole series was about. Him kind of getting a chance to, kind of put a final stamp on this character that he's been, portraying for 40 years.
Right. Yeah.
But not so much for the others. There's a lot with each of them, but you could see a potential of them doing more with, or in them coming back for other stuff should they do more. There are a couple of characters who it's obvious these guys should have their own show. Whether or not they will be the direct spinoff or not, I don't know. But they are great. They're just great. And I'm gonna say it. One of them is Worf. I feel like Worf is just I don't know. Again, there is something about Worf and something about Michael Dorn that makes that character fun and relatable and he's got so much going for him, and then the way he plays with certain other characters, they all work. His stuff with Seven of Nine, albeit limited, was great. His stuff with Rafi, or Raphael as he insists on calling her, is great. Um, yeah, I would love to see them do something, but I really don't know. I don't know who's going to be in the spinoff or not. I just know that there will be a spinoff. We can expect there will be a spinoff from the show featuring some of them somewhere down the
Gotcha.
road.
Gotcha.
One thing I will say that's been pretty funny, that I don't know why I've started noticing it, but just how old everybody is. And it's not because they make like the obligatory old joke or whatever it is, right? But it's because like the way they move and their mannerisms, like you'll catch them doing something and you'll be like, okay, yeah, that's that's that old man walk or whatever it is, right? Oh, there's somebody who's had a couple of injuries they never healed right from and stuff like that. So it's interesting to watch. But other than, I'm not going to go into all that because it's not why we're here tonight. But and it doesn't take anything away from those guys at all. They look amazing. There are some great promo shots of the Picard cast and crew that are just fantastic. And if you haven't seen them, you should go see them. Not you, David, because you haven't watched the show. And if you see the promos, it gives away a lot. So, but for those of us who know, man, they look great. They look great.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we'll get you there. We'll get you there, David. Um, there is big speculation as to who the final reveal is. Final big returning reveal is. Is it Janeway? Is it someone else? Is it whatever? I don't think it's Janeway. Not to say that I don't think that she won't appear at some point, but I don't think she's going to appear the way everybody thinks she is. So that's all I'll say on that. I think she's there. They've mentioned her a few times, but the way they've mentioned her, it's kind of clear that she's not who you think she is.
Mm.
So, um, yeah, I don't think it's going to be Janeway. Other than that, it's been great. It's been wonderful. And when we finally get to a point where we can really debate it, there are several different points that I'm going to just bash over the head of everyone listening with because it was so obvious you should have picked up on this a long time ago. That kind of thing. But as we said, we're not here for that. We are here for Indiscretion, Deep Space Nine, Kira and Dukat. David, would you like me to give the recap, or do you want to do it?
Who did it last week? Who's trading it off? Is it my turn? Is it your turn?
I don't know. Did I do it last week? I think I did it because
Uh,
wasn't last week the visitor?
Yes. No. Hippocratic
No,
Oath was last week,
Hippocratic Oath
and
was
you did it
last week.
last week. You did it last week. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do it. I'll do it. All right.
All right.
Okay, guys. So this one again, as Perry just insinuated, is going to be focusing on Major Kira and Dukat. So episode opens up and Major Kira gets a message from a Bajoran smuggler that he might have recovered a piece from the Ravenok, a lost Cardassian ship that disappeared 6 years ago before the Bajoran occupation was ended. That included a number of Bajoran prisoners, including a friend of Kira's. As she's making plans to go leave the station and investigate, Cisco comes in and says, "Hey, turns out the Cardassians are asking you to pause and allow one of their people to come along with you because, of course, it was one of their ships. And so they're asking that they accompany you on your mission." Kira very, very reluctantly agrees. And who does it turn out that they send to go on the trip but Gul Dukat? Gul Dukat shows up and says, "You ready to go? I'm ready." And so Kira says, "All right, look, I'm in charge of this mission. You have to obey my orders. I'm in charge of this. So if we have any problems, let me know." And Gul Dukat, um, I'm going to go ahead and say it now, I guess a little bit preemptively. Gul Dukat expresses admiration for Kira to the point where, at least for me, and Perry, you can let me know if this is accurate or not, but to the point where he's almost willing to suggest that it's more than just admiration for another person, but maybe something more there. And I there's a reason to think more about that, but we'll get there. When they get to the area, or they get to the smuggler, and they examine the piece of metal, and they determine that yes, it was a piece of the Ravanok, and then they find out where the piece was found from a Ferengi ship, yada yada yada. So they go to the area where they think the ship was last seen, and ultimately end up on a planet that does have the wreckage of the Ravanok. And there are 12 graves at the site. And so while Kira investigates the wreckage, Gul Dukat goes into the graves to determine if they can identify who was in the graves. Um, when Kira comes back out, she sees that Gul Dukat is, well, she later says he's weeping or crying, but he's not doing that much emotional, other than he does have a Bajoran earring in his hand. And we come to learn that the Bajoran woman who had this earring was his Bajoran mistress when he was the leader of the Bajoran occupation. And then we come to learn that this mistress of his had a 13-year-old girl, a daughter that he was the father of. And he had been trying to send them away from Bajor because he knew that the Cardassian occupation was ending. And he cared for this Bajoran woman and his daughter. And he was trying to get them away from Bajor so that they wouldn't have to live on Bajor after the occupation had ended, or on Cardassia, because in neither on neither planet would they have been fully accepted. So he was trying to get them away to a different planet to live out their lives as best they could. He is married, however, and has 7 children with his wife, and so this mistress and child with this mistress are a big problem for him. Back on Cardassia, if she is welcomed
A
by him to
hybrid.
this, yeah, she's a hybrid. It would endanger his family and career. It'd be a scandal, especially because he has made enemies now that he has aligned himself with the new Cardassian civilian government. So he has come here to kill both women, both the mistress he had and the daughter, if he can find them. His mistress is dead, and so now he needs to confirm that his daughter is dead because he can't have her come back to haunt his career. Kira is obviously horrified. This is absolutely ridiculous, and she tells him to his face that if you kill your daughter, if we find her and you kill her, I will kill you. And they argue, and eventually they do find the survivors of the Ravanok. It turns out that the survivors were captured and imprisoned and made to do forced labor for another race of aliens on this planet, the Breen, apparently.
Mhm.
And so they are able to disguise themselves as Breen, break in, rescue the prisoners, and Dukat confronts his daughter, and she recognizes him, and she she has an emotional reaction, like she wants him to be there. She had been imagining that he would come rescue her, but she'd also been hearing from Cardassians that he would never let her live, and so he's here to kill her. And so he's, Kira has a gun to Dukat, and Dukat has a gun to his daughter. And Kira Kira knows that Cold Dukat doesn't actually have it in him to kill his own daughter. The reason he even confessed to it was because he was actually deeply conflicted over this and actually does want to reconcile with his daughter. And so they rescue the daughter. They go back, and Gold Dukat says, "I'm going to take her back to Cardassia and deal with the ramifications. Damn the consequences." So, um, and they actually, Kira and Dukat actually kind of have a affectionate moment right before Gold Dukat leaves. So, again, is there something more there? That would be absolutely insane if there was, but who knows? So, meanwhile, there is a side plot on the station. Uh, Ben Cisco is having some lady problems because his girlfriend, Cassidy, is interested in taking up a new job to work for Bejor on a more regular basis. So she'll be able to be around the station more. And with the help of Dax, she is like, "Oh, I could move on to the station. I could get quarters on the station. I could be around more." And poor Ben Cisco does
It's
not
a
give a
big
good
step.
answer. It's a big step,
It's
he
a big
says.
step.
And so, of course, Cassidy is not happy with that answer. And so they have a bit of a conflict. And so Cisco has to eventually, by the end, come back to her and say, "Look, I'm my job cost the life of my previous wife. My what I do is dangerous. I don't want you to be in danger." Uh, Funny enough, it's actually his son Jake who is the wise one, parenting his father, saying, "Look, it's her
Role
choice.
reversal.
Yes, it's her life. Let her live it. And if that means she wants to be close to you and take on the risk of being with you, that's her choice. Don't force her away against her will, or don't make the decision for her." And it's a great moment. Cisco leans in for a kiss with Cassidy, and she walks away. They've reconciled, but he still is in the
She
doghouse for a little bit.
I'm gonna say she teases.
Oh yeah,
She she clearly was leading him on.
yeah,
So great scene with him.
yeah. A
Um,
lot to talk about even in that part of the
oh,
storyline.
we're
The
going
side.
to.
Oh yeah, there's a lot
Don't
there.
worry, we're going to. Can't, especially when we have something that features the Cisco's, we can't
Oh yeah,
leave them hanging. They've, yeah, obviously. I'm gonna just say it. They're a favorite family. Like we've seen
right,
different family dynamics, but obviously we've never seen one with such a focus.
right,
And we've both commented on it enough. I think it's fair to say that we enjoy the Cisco
right.
family. So yeah,
So
uh,
before I do anything else, I just want to mention this episode apparently was directed by LeVar Burton.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Great thing to shout out there, Mr. Burton, giving us a lot with Trek, continuing to do so. And again, go watch Picard because he's there doing some great stuff still.
right.
But yeah, so um, let's just start with first impressions. What were obviously as the person who is new to Deep Space Nine, what are your first thoughts on this episode?
Well, I'll start with by saying that Nana Visitor as Kira Nerys has never looked better. Like this, whatever the suit they have her in now, they don't have the weird shoulder pads. It's frankly, it's more tight fitting, so she's able to just be itself. She has got the red lipstick on. She looks great. And Gold Dukat, as I was kind of saying earlier, I mean, not only did he have a Bajoran mistress, but he seems to be indicating that he likes Kira on some level. He
Yeah,
admires
he
her.
does. He no, he it's definitely more than an admiration. He's
Yes.
definitely infatuated. He would
Yes, he's
very much like
attracted
to
to
be,
Kira.
yes.
Yes, he's attracted to Kira. Um, and again, it's just the part of my brain that sympathizes with Kira is like that's just not even possible. So I entertain that idea. It's just impossible to entertain it. But that is what is being communicated from Gul Dukat, is that he's attracted to her. And
You know, the number of people who really do think that at some point they could work it out and be a couple is astonishing. I
it
don't
would be the
know.
most. I go ahead.
I
Sorry.
don't I no I just I don't know what people have in their brains that make them think that this is possible. But at every turn, Kira has done nothing but express utter disgust with this man. And even in their most so-called tender of moments, she is always very quick to remind him that it'll never happen. And
Whatever
it's
it is, don't
yeah,
even think it. Yeah.
even to the point that it has made it into the Deep Space Nine documentary. If you watch the documentary What We Leave Behind, she talks about how disgusted by Dukat she was, and
Correct.
when other people would even suggest it, how infuriated she got because she was like,
Yeah.
Kira would never, and yet there
Yes.
are people who to this day
Yes.
persist with the thought, and I'm like, listen, the woman herself has said,
Yeah.
never gonna happen.
Nope.
Please stop.
Yeah.
Please stop. But
Yeah.
yeah, and you're right. I mean, he has all of the charm of a sleazebag, and he's trying, definitely. I think that he's trying to, you know, intimate some kind of we may have, he even says, we could be close friends. And he's obviously meaning them, not
Right.
Cardassia and Bajor. He means
Yes.
him and Kara. And
Yeah.
she's like, nope,
Yeah.
never gonna happen.
Assuming
Um,
that, yeah, assuming that Cardassian and Bajor ever work out, not you and me. That's yeah.
right.
She makes that very clear early on. Um, but
And
yeah, I mean, the idea that Gul Dukat. I mean, so
And what a
when Kira,
sleazeball. I didn't say again, what a sleazeball, considering
yeah,
that he's on a mission where he knows if he finds this woman and their child, he is going to kill them. And he's married with 7 children, and he's still trying to put the moves on Kira. At what point did anybody think that this was oh yeah, this is a guy Kira's gonna hook up with? She is, I mean, yes, she is, she's got a questionable, assassin past or whatever, but at what point have we ever felt that Kira was that morally compromised that she would take up with a man who has twice already cheated on his wife?
yeah, yeah.
Come on.
Oh, twice. What's the second? I mean,
Oh, sorry.
did you
Mild
reveal
spoiler.
something? Wait a
Mild
minute.
spoiler.
Hold on.
Sorry.
There was the woman. Okay, so in that episode, the flashback where we went to, it was about Odo learning to be. He was becoming. They were on the station back when it was under Cardassian control, and Odo was learning to be a detective. And there's that blonde woman who was the married to the one
Oh yeah.
guy. That's
hmm
not. Was she involved with Gul Dukat? I think that was right.
I think that they kind of danced around it, didn't totally implicate. They implicated that she was obviously a collaborator, but
Yes.
they kind of made it more like she and her husband were collaborators. We're not really sure like the full extent of her involvement.
But
So is it possible?
I remember now you said there was a scene that was cut that actually did make it clear that she was having an intimate
Yeah.
relationship with Gul Dukat. But again, that scene was cut from the final episode and apparently never got to air, and even the footage was ultimately lost or something.
Well,
Is that
what I was thinking of was not that. Mild
there's
spoiler.
something else?
Yeah,
Okay, there's
there's
something
mild
else going
spoiler. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't think I gave it. I just said twice because I knew, but yeah,
yeah,
mild
yeah,
spoiler.
yeah.
So
Mild
there.
spoiler. All right.
We
Okay. Well,
yeah.
let me put it this way. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, you shouldn't be.
yeah,
You
yeah.
shouldn't be.
The fact that he had a mistress, and that, it's funny. Everyone, I think a lot of people can relate to when you have a past flame and you've broken up and it's in the past. You can look back on it with rose colored glasses. So yeah, of course his mistress that he had, he was all rosy eyed about because he didn't have to worry about her for 13 years or the last 5 years. So now he can be all sentimental about her body in the grave, in a grave, and all that.
Well, I
But
think that
how
more
much
than
did he
anything.
really care for her? Yeah, yeah.
Well, I
Go ahead.
think that more than anything is what did it for him was the fact that she was dead. Like he was very
Mm,
sad and broken up that she was dead. But as he indicated before they found out that she was dead, that if he found her, he was going to have to kill her. Wait,
right. Well,
That was after
after
they. Right. That
after
was
they
after.
exhume the bodies and
Yes.
find the
But
earring, and then he talks about it. Yeah.
but we find out that that was his mission all along. He was coming to kill Tora Naprem and her daughter.
Right.
And the fact that the ship crashing had done that for him, that was just one less thing. And he got to be sad and weep over her grave and everything else because he didn't have to kill her, but he was still going to carry out the
Yeah.
mission.
Well,
So,
I mean, again, Kira is all like, "You told me because you actually didn't want to do it. And you wanted someone to stop you." But yeah, that's what he was there for. That's the reason he agreed to go along.
mhm.
But actually, on that point, so let's talk about Mark
Alamo, Mark Alamo.
was the one who plays Gul Dukat, and
Hmm.
in the runabout at the beginning of this when they're talking, I mean the camera is more focused. It's more like zoomed in on him than ever before, and so like seeing Mark underneath all that Cardassian makeup, like he popped out of that makeup more than ever before in my estimation. Again, I feel like it was camera work, but I also feel like they had done something with the makeup to like make his face like not so covered. I don't know if that makes any sense, but he just popped more in that
I
scene for
think I
me.
understand what you're saying. Yeah, you
Yeah.
you and it's weird because you know what? I noticed something similar, but it was at the end of the episode. At the end of the episode, when he's standing on the promenade with Kira before he goes to his ship and everything like that, I noticed his face looked different to me, and it took me a minute to realize what it was, and it was that he looked um, very smooth, very polished
Right.
versus when we saw him earlier in the episode, and especially on the runabout and then down on the planet, where he seemed his skin was more lined and you could see pores and um, he was he was more, I guess, natural, animalistic. I don't know what phrase you want to use for that, but he did. Like, and I don't know if it was just a camera thing or if they were trying to highlight the fact that they're on this arid planet and Cardassians are basically giant lizard people, and the warmth kind of invigorated him versus being
Mm,
on the cold Bajoran Run station now, and so now he's kind of this smooth, oily, clammy creature.
right.
I don't know, but I did notice a difference. I didn't think about it as being like a camera mistake or a makeup mistake. I just thought that it was something that had to do with the physiology there, because there was a lot of talk of physiology and noting the distinct differences between Cardassians and Bajorans, and yet at the same time they can clearly um, mate and have hybrid children.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Which is a question all of itself.
yeah,
But it happens
it is.
across Star
Yeah,
Trek.
and
Star
but
Trek
you know
has it all
what?
over the place.
But that's the thing too about Star Trek does things to feature hybrids, but it's not as common as you think. In most cases, we see people who are homogenous, right? And then they will throw a hybrid in somewhere like Spock is obviously our first as the half Vulcan, half human individual. And then of course I don't think in Next Generation they did hybrids of any kind. I remember there being one kind of like throw off character who wasn't, he wasn't a recurring character. He wasn't a main part of the cast or anything. Who was a I think a human Romulan hybrid. But other than that, that was it. But then Voyager did it. They had the half human, half Klingon, and then here we have Tora Zial on Deep Space Nine.
Right.
So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it's not. They make it sound like it's common, but at the same time, it's like you only ever see it. Uh, it's rare. Like there's not like a group of them in Starfleet, right? But uh, it's weird the way that it's pointed out, and it kind of denotes its own uniqueness, and it makes you wonder about other races. Like, could a human and a Ferengi have a child? You
Of
know,
all the races you had to suggest,
I
that was
had
the
to.
one. Which
That one.
actually is funny because that does tie in later in because we do have some Ferengi love advice from Cork, but
The
we'll
best love
save that.
advice the best love advice I've ever heard. In
Oh,
fact, I
it
remember the
was
first time I heard it, and I still repeat it to this day.
it's
I love it.
hilarious. It
It's
is absolutely
fantastic.
hysterical.
Okay.
Yes. But let me go back.
Yes, go ahead. I was gonna say,
Mark
let's get back to Mark Lamo.
Alamo. The reason I was bringing him up is because this man subjected himself to humiliation in this episode, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, Perry. That man bent over for the camera and rubbed a something on his butt because
The
he
dermal
apparently stabbed
regenerator.
himself. He let Kira pull something out of his behind because he sat down on some spiky thing.
Yes.
I was like, this man committed. Like they said, this is what you're gonna do in this episode, and he did it. I paused it and I turned to my roommate. I was like, this man committed to the part. Oh my goodness. And Kira laughs at him and he starts laughing too. And I was just like, I mean, we had to fill in some time apparently because it turned
Well,
into a serious scene after all that happens.
yeah.
But
And I think this is also part of one of those things of where this is them attempting to kind of soften the character of Gold Dukat. Because you got to keep in mind, the few times we'd seen Dukat before this, there was always a very confrontational, adversarial tone with him. He had this kind of, he was perched above and he was watching everybody else while he had all the answers, and he was just waiting for a chance to strike and take back all that he had lost. And
right,
that's even how he presented himself and things. And that's kind of some of the things that he said at different times about how, Cardassia would one day regain all that it had lost. And while he would say Cardassia, you knew he meant himself.
mm,
And so in this episode, we are seeing a kind of a softening of the character. We see him frantically looking through the remains. He finds the earring and the bracelet for Tora Naprem. He cries over her death. And then here we are. We see him in this kind of, not kind of, but this very humorous scene. He's got the sand spike in his butt. She's got to pull it out. He's jiggling around from the pain and everything, and then of course rubbing the dermal regenerator and all that. I mean, it was a lot of
you
these
have to
things were
turn it on. You have to
right.
turn it on.
A lot of these things were to get you to laugh and kind of forget for a second that for a good portion of earlier episodes, earlier seasons, he was an enemy.
An antagonist, yeah.
And then and then just as you're starting to kind of relax your guard around this guy a little bit, and even Kira does it because she's like, "Oh, now I understand why you wanted to come on the mission." And she echoes the thought that the rest of us were most likely having when the reveal of who Toraziel was, right? She's like, "Oh, that's why you were so desperate to come on this meeting. You wanted to find your daughter and
Right.
rescue her." And it kind of,
Yeah.
and again, it almost softens you a little bit more to him.
And
Oh,
as
he's
soon
not such
as
a bad guy. He wants to rescue his daughter. And then he's like,
she
actually,
said that, I knew his next line was going to be, "No, I'm here to kill her." It was just the next line that made sense.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, again, I like
yeah,
predicting stories as they happen to see if I can guess them right. And I was like, "Yep, I got
yep.
that
And
one
he, I
right."
mean, and he says it, and the way she jerks around it was kind of like the same reaction. You're just like, oh, you're gonna kill your daughter. And yeah, it was just like so. I remember trying to because it escaped me at first of just how old Ziao was,
Hmm.
because
It'd be
I
18
don't know
now.
why I thought that she was like a kid. Like for some reason, I always had this image in my mind of her being like 6 or 7 years old and ushered onto the ship and jetting off wherever. But no, she was 13. And then her father, like, so now it's been 6 years since anybody has seen the ship. So yeah, she's 19 years old.
Mm,
She's an
yep.
adult, at least by human standards. She's an adult, a young adult, but still an adult. And so
Right.
she can clearly remember her father. And that's what always threw me off because I was just like, there's no way she would have recognized him on sight like that. But then like again, the math clicked in my head. And I was like, yes, she would. She was
Yep.
13. They
Yep.
were together. There's no reason that she
On
wouldn't
some
recognize him.
capacity.
Right.
Yeah, there is a question of how much would they have known each other? How much did he like keep her hidden away? But yes, yeah, she recognized him. Yeah.
Yeah. And
And she had
I,
dreamed of him saving her.
yeah,
That's something she says, which is very poignant as he's about to shoot her in the
shoot
face.
her. Right. He's about to kill her. And here she is talking about how the thing that's kept her going, kept her alive, is this
Mm,
this fantasy of her father coming to save her.
yeah.
And yeah, just a, a very conflicting, convoluted people, the Cardassians.
Yes.
This isn't the
Yeah.
first time that we've had to deal with Cardassian family dynamics.
That's right. Yep.
Thinking all the way back to that episode where we had the adopted boy Rugal,
Hmm.
who the Bajorans had taken him in, and then his father had shown up to his real father, his Cardassian father, had shown up to take him back. But even
Right.
then, as much as they tried to stress the importance of family, we find out that Rugel's real father was more interested in exacting his revenge on those who had hidden his child away from him than he was on actually giving his boy a real home. He was ready
Right.
to disrupt his life, remove him from his Bajoran parents, and whisk him away to Cardassia, also that he could punish these other people versus actually pay attention to the son that he claimed he loved so much and lost. And then we see, similar things being echoed here by Dukat, who's talking about how much he loves his family, and family is the most important thing to our Cardassian, and everything I'm doing here is to protect my family, my wife, my 7 children. I'm gonna shoot her. It's like, what?
Yeah,
Like,
Kira
what are you
has
talking about?
yeah, and Kira has great responses to him when he starts trying to defend and excuse his attempt to kill her, and he's like, and basically she works through it out, and she's like, "You're just here to protect yourself," and "You're not protecting your family, protecting yourself," and he's like, "Well, I protect my family by protecting myself," and she just doesn't, she won't take it. She's like, "No, no, this is about
No,
you."
this is all about, yeah, this is all about you. This is all you about you maintaining power. This
Right,
is all this is. This has nothing to do with Seattle, nothing to do with your family back home, none of it.
right.
And I still think it's interesting that in the end, she was fine with him putting her on a ship to go back to Cardassia. What's to stop him on their trip back to Cardassia from pushing her out of an airlock or poisoning her? Or shit. I'm just saying, like, if she was
uh,
legit about saving the girl, why didn't she offer to keep her on the station? She could stay on the
Kira,
station.
why
Yeah.
didn't Kira offer it?
Yeah, why didn't care? She's
A
19
good
years old,
question.
so it's not like she
Yeah,
needed necessarily a guardian to stay with her or whatever like that. She's a young woman. She could join Starfleet. She could have a job on the station. There's plenty of things for her to have done on the station and been safe. But no, because he seemingly had a change of heart, we're gonna let you guys go back on a Cardassian freighter together, alone, unsupervised, not even a security guard, like nothing. Like seriously, Dukat is stupid. He should have never told her what his real mission was. He should have just found Zial, thanked her for helping him find Zial, boarded the ship, and halfway to the ship just opened the door.
man, Perry's all planning murder over here.
I'm just saying, like, if there's one thing that all the space shows that I've
Well,
watched have taught me, it's that in space you can get away with murder. Like that's what I've learned from all of them. They
there's
don't
no
leave a
body when you throw
There's
him
no
out in
hey,
airlock.
and
Yeah.
and 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 our current laws still state, no body, no case. Space is dark and vast.
Whoa, wait a minute,
No,
hold on. I mean, okay, you're saying okay, never mind, never
in
mind.
current yes, in current legal lingo, if there's no body, there's no case. If someone just goes missing, they're missing until there's a body found. So they're just missing. So again, space is dark and vast. Plenty of
Right.
places you could just throw a body and no one would find it. So
I'm sure the Expanse has explored that a bit.
oh, several times, several
I
times.
know. Yeah,
And,
it definitely
yeah,
has.
I mean, and it won't leave a blood trace or anything like
Yeah,
that. Just push her out the airlock. She'll be dead in seconds.
yeah.
Not painful at all. Seconds, gone, done. So yeah, he could have just lied and then just pushed her. I mean, he could have set a phaser to vaporize her. Again, no residue left behind. Just gone.
Yeah.
You know, out of sight, out of mind. But no, we none of that was talked about. None of that, whatever. He just lie, man. If it's that important to you, just lie.
Well, again, that's why the whole Kira says the reason you told me is because you didn't actually want to do this.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um. Oh,
So
interesting. Oh, I just wanted to. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
I
Go
was
ahead.
gonna say this isn't the last time that we see Tora Zial. She will be back. So we know he
Ooh.
doesn't do what I say. Um, but they will be back, and we will find out the ramifications and repercussions and consequences of Zial going to Cardassia.
Wow. Okay. I'm glad to hear that because I feel like they could have just literally, in terms of storytelling, pushed her out an airlock and we never hear of her again. But if they are gonna be consistent and hold that plot line through, then that's great. I look forward to
Yes,
seeing
they
more of
do,
that.
and it's an interesting story. But again, it just makes me wonder about Cardassians because it's just like, why would you make such a big deal about family and yet you don't accept your family members? right? And then it's if you're and if it's a thing about purity, right? And we don't want half breeds running through our streets or whatever, then why don't you more stringently discipline your um officers, your rank and file? Because Kira even says you're not the first Cardassian to keep a Bajoran mistress, so we know that that's not the first hybrid that they've ever had. We know
Well,
she's not.
so let's. My remembering of that episode we just talked about the boy who was left on Bajor, who was a Cardassian and all that, is the guy who was his real father, the Cardassian, was basically, if I remember correctly, was insinuating that it's shameful to not have protected his son. It's shameful that he couldn't care, couldn't like he lost his son was kidnapped. That's the shame that he would experience. So it's not that he is ashamed of his son in the sense that he has a son, as much as like his ability to protect his son. So like the shame that maybe Gul Dukat would experience is, well, first off, the Bajorans were, a subjugated race. How could you fall for them? Actually, Gul Dukat even says that to Kira in the runabout. He says that he basically insinuates that the Cardassian invasion and occupation was good for Bajor, and like we
Yes, he
actually,
does. What a piece of work, and what a thing
yeah.
he says. Go ahead. I'll let you
Oh, I
tell that
forgot
because that
to
was
talk. Yeah,
yeah,
he says to her like, you guys had like lost all of your energy and all of your passion, and y'all are just isolated on your little planet. And whatever you might say about the Cardassians, we inspired you to rise up and
yeah.
be more than you were. And
We kicked
it's,
you out of your complacency, and we
ugh,
made you. You're made of sterner stuff now. You're stronger than you've ever been in centuries,
yeah,
and it's all because of us.
yeah.
And
And there are just
yeah,
so many things you're like,
so
oh
many things
man,
wrong with this mindset. Just like I've
yes,
yeah, I've never just been like, you know what? I think this is what how I feel when I talk to people who are just deeply wrong about something,
yeah,
and you're just like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, where do I start with why you're so messed up? Like
right,
that was kind of the face that I felt like Kira was having was, whoo, this
yeah,
woman just the patience to also not push him out of an airlock. She didn't
right.
want to go with him in the first place. No one would scream foul if you know what he didn't come back from the mission. I mean,
Well,
a
the
whole
Cardassian
lot of
government might, but yeah, yeah.
I mean, but they'd
But
have to
yeah,
prove it first. They have to prove that she did it on purpose.
well, I
And
guess
with
the only way to get someone out of those runabouts is to beam them off, but that could have worked too.
I mean, they were flying towards a planet that had already forced down one ship, right? And it had all
And the
kinds of
ionic
ionic interference and
that's right.
right.
Yeah,
And I mean,
yeah,
he could have just been lost in turbulence. And he was even ready to
that's
beam down
right.
right away.
That's
And
right.
she stopped him. She was like, I had to scatter your particles. She could have just said, we didn't know that it was that bad, beamed him down. He never materialized. Whoops.
Yeah, yeah.
Whoops. It could
And
have
she wouldn't have
worked.
even been lying. She could have been
Nope.
totally right about all of it.
Right,
Yeah.
and Starfleet
Uh,
would have defended her, Cisco would have defended her, the Bajoran people would have defended her, and with the peace treaty in place, no one was gonna really press that issue.
and with the Cardassians on the back foot because of the Klingon invasion. Which, did they mention any
Mhm.
of that at the beginning of this one? I feel
No,
like it
they
wasn't
didn't
this
really
one. It was the
mention it
last
much.
episode.
Yeah, last episode, but they
They
didn't
were
mention it
saying that they
yeah,
were still occupying some of the frontier
yeah.
settlements of the Cardassians. Yeah.
Yeah. So not
Um.
a really of a big deal here, but yeah, it's just like we they would have had other pressing concerns than
Right.
trying to launch a full-on investigation into what happened to Gold Dukat around a planet that so clearly has obvious flaws. That's what that would have been.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obvious flaw, obvious dangers, I would say. The planet clearly had some very obvious dangers, and he was a casualty.
Right.
Done. Wash your hands, and then we would have that would have ended several other plot points down the line. We
Right.
wouldn't have, but whatever.
Yeah.
Let's just go for the convoluted story, I guess. Whatever.
uh. So yeah, I feel like we've kind of hit up all that, so I guess we can move over to
Yes,
the.
now we can turn our attention to the Cisco's, and we are entering
Yes.
into the next stage of development here. We have a fully adult Jake Cisco now.
Mhm.
Jake is
Mhm.
18
Mhm.
years old. We've got Ben, who is no longer living as the single father, and now he's entered into his own kind of second stage of life, and he is trying to have a relationship. First real relationship since Jennifer. So
Yes. Yep.
here we go. Here we go.
Yeah.
So just to bring you back up to speed on this one, of course, as David said in his recap, Cassidy has been offered a great job, which will keep her not only in the sector, but allow her to live on the station. And she asked the question of should she get quarters on the station or not? And his response was, that's a big step. So this causes a lot of hijinks to ensue. And you know what? I'm going to say it. A lot of those hijinks are caused by Dax. Dax is not a friend here. She
Nope.
is an instigator.
Yep.
She just
100%.
uh,
The way
need to learn.
Cisco glares
Yeah.
at her after she
Hmm.
suggests getting states. I mean, to be fair to Cassidy, the fact that he wasn't ready to answer that question, I mean, yes, Dax t-balled that up for Cassidy, but he also wasn't ready for it. But yeah, no, she is not a help at all. She
Not at
is
all.
yeah,
And
she's got it for him.
so now I guess we do have to try to look at everybody's position here as objectively as we can. You know, it would, regardless of relationship, it would make a lot of sense for Cassidy to live on the station, considering her job as a freighter captain. She would need to be close by her ship, which would make sense to be docked at the station. And with all the business and commerce that goes on the ship anyway, it makes sense for her to have a place there on the station. And then she's working in the Bajoran sectors, which is where the station is. So again, more sense for her to be there. So yeah, just a lot of things that just say she should have quarters on the station.
Right.
And then again, then look at it from Ben's perspective. Again, he's been single for a long time. His brief attempts at romance, intimacy have not gone well. And the last really serious relationship, even as he admits, was with Jennifer. And his job, his profession, being in Starfleet, got her killed. And he doesn't want to go through that again. Understandable. The man was all PTSD, yelling at Picard and the rest of them and everything else behind the loss of his wife. And he didn't want to go through that kind of trauma again. Again, completely understandable. I mean, if you've been through a terrible trauma, are you wanting to relive it any time again in your life? Of course
Right.
not.
Yeah.
So, I've seen people argue that Ben was being selfish and he was being a little, treading water here, whatever, instead of committing to a decision. But I think he had every right to be hesitant here. I mean, from what we can tell, his relationship with Cassidy, I mean, it's not like they've been dating for years or something like that. This is,
Right.
still new. All this is still very new. And for her to suddenly be making her home at his place, that's where not only he works, but he lives. He's raising his son there.
Well, he's in
Um,
control of it. I mean, he
yeah,
could literally
yeah,
find her quarters. Yeah.
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
just like, hey, I have a home down the street now. It's like, hey,
Right.
I
It's not
bought a
like they're
house for you down the street. Yeah, yeah.
right.
Well, not quite like
Yeah.
that, but yeah, you know
But
what
yeah,
I mean.
but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of implication there. Even if she does have her own quarters on the station somewhere, how soon until she's just living in his quarters, right? So I mean, there's a lot that goes on there with that kind of decision, and I think that it was absolutely fine of him to want to consider things before making any particular commitment. And it's a very obvious 90s trope for the woman to scream, "You're afraid of commitment." And it's one of those moments where I kind of cringed a little bit because I was like, is he afraid of commitment? Like, I don't think that you're
Or is
thinking
he
this through.
legitimately considering all the implications of what
Right,
commitment mean and doesn't want to preemptively commit to something he's not ready for?
right. And it's like, why is that suddenly a bad thing that he's attempting to be honest with at least himself and
Right.
recognizing that this may not be something he's ready for. He obviously cares about you. He obviously, wants you to be in his life and everything, but does he want you to, live down the hall, basically? Like, her eagerness to be in a relationship with him, I'm not saying is at fault in any way. But at the same time, it's just like we're supposed to be so considerate of her feelings and her position here, but none of the same consideration is necessarily given to Ben, at least not right away.
Yeah.
Once we finally get to a point where we hear why he was so hesitant and we hear his objections, I think people did kind of be like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. But for the first part, especially the way that it's presented, they make it almost seem like he's just dragging his feet because, oh, he's typical man. He can't say I love you, but that's not it at all. The man's been through some things. He's not
Right.
just some jerk who doesn't want to share his home because he wants to play Xbox all day. He's
Right.
already lost a wife. He's
Yeah.
already been through a very traumatic heartbreak. He's got a
Right.
reason to be hesitant, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, that always that part where she's yelling at him about afraid of commitment. I really wish that they just found another way to kind of challenge his hesitancy and not make it that because
Yeah.
that
Instead of
wasn't it.
like, I think you're afraid to commit. The be more. That's. I wish she'd been more sympathetic, being like,
Yeah,
"Are you afraid of commitment?" Not accusing, but like, "Hey, I'm sensing some hesitancy here. Are is there
is
something
there a
you're
problem?
concerned with?"
Is there something you're
Yeah.
concerned about? Let's talk about this and figure out what your objection is if you have an objection. Because she didn't even really know that he had an objection. She
Right.
just, I mean, again, I mean, I'm not saying his answer was great. It's a big step, whatever. But again, he didn't say no.
Right.
But she didn't give him she did not give him a chance to explain. Not then.
Right.
She does later after talking with
Right.
Jake and Nog of all freaking people.
Yes.
But
Yes. We'll have to talk about that in a
yeah,
minute. But
but she does
actually,
not give him a chance to explain. But no, we can talk about it
yeah.
now. That is
Well,
fine.
I before I do, I just want to say, and maybe this will kind of just take us off track for a minute, but this episode, by raising the stakes, making a big step, does put a point on it where I don't yet quite buy this relationship, unfortunately. Um, Again, you know how it what goes on, but for the moment, for me, it's like, she, as I just said, like she didn't ask him like, "Hey, like what's going on?" She was like, "You're afraid of commitment." She's punishing him like, "Well, maybe I just want to take the job then. Maybe
Mhm.
I'll like." She responds in
She
the
suddenly makes him very responsible for her future and everything. Because she's like, "Well, I
well,
guess I'm just not gonna," and she, I mean, she lies, but she says, "Well, I guess I'm just not gonna
yes,
take the
she
job. I don't wanna
lies.
be here. I don't wanna be on the station if you don't wanna have me. I'm not gonna take this job. I'm not gonna be," like,
Yes,
she so then it
she.
suddenly becomes now he is responsible for her
Well,
future,
what
her
I'm
upset.
I all of that, but what I'm getting at is to follow up on what you said about I wish they had come up with a better thing to say than like you're afraid of commitment. That's the stereotypical men are afraid of commitment. Well, what's the
Mhm,
stereotypical woman to ask that question, to be like that, to be all accusatory and you're afraid of commitment? Like at this point, I'm not. Here's what I'm getting at. At the moment, the reason he likes her is because her brother plays baseball. But at the moment, other than the fact that she's around, I don't know why he likes her, why she likes him, other than the fact that
oh,
they're
I see
just
what you're
near
saying.
each other.
They
Um,
haven't done enough to, like, endear us to Cassidy yet, is what you're saying.
yes, exactly. And so even at the end of the episode, when he's all apologizing and giving a legitimate explanation, I was expecting him to say all that. I lost a wife, yada yada. But even at the end, I still wasn't quite there. I mean, the fact again, like it's a quirky little fun moment where she walks away after he goes to kiss her, like it's a cute moment, but it's also again, it's like okay, there's still tension there. Is this
Mhm,
going to be held over his head for the rest of their relationship? Um, Basically, what I'm getting at is I want to love her as much as apparently Cisco, if he's going to commit to the relationship, is going to love her. And at the moment,
okay.
I don't love her as much as I would want to if that's going to be the way that it goes. I mean, heck, making relationships work is hard both for character writing and in real life, so I get it. Um, but yeah, but we can move on to Jake Sisko giving love advice, both from Nog and Quark. Oh my gosh, getting relationship advice or even talking it out with a Ferengi is just insane.
Yeah. So we'll sum up Jake and Nog just fairly quickly to say that they gave some pretty solid advice it's their turn. Well, when it's Jake's
Which I
turn,
just want to
Jake
say,
and Nog talking gave some solid, decent advice.
well, I just want to say because again, it's Caskey's like, yeah, Jake's a smart boy. I fully believed this conversation between Jake and Nog was Jake talking out loud, and Nog being like, "What are you saying? That doesn't make any sense. Are you ridiculous? Like, you don't understand women." Like, I think Jake was he includes Nog in the conversation because he's a nice kid. But
Right.
keep
He
going,
was
keep going.
he was less talking to Nog and more talking at Nog. He was just sounding out his ideas, and Nog
Out
was just
loud
like,
and
yeah,
Nog in the area.
yeah.
Yes, Nog was in the room when he was talking out loud. Yeah,
But
but keep
when
going.
Cisco
Sorry.
was talking with Bashir and Dax, and he's asking them in their opinion and so forth.
You
We
didn't
get
say very big step, did you?
oh no, you didn't say that, did you? No, right, right,
I
all
don't
that.
think I did.
He's like, and then here comes Quark, and he's like, well, if you ask me, and he's like, no one was asking you, and that's your problem. And then Quark says, you've got it all wrong. If you've got
You
to
humans, you
you
humans.
yeah, you're always trying to win her affection and treat her like equals, but you have to realize women are the enemy. And then he says she's complaining about spending time, you're not spending enough time with her. Threaten to see her even less. She doesn't like the gifts that you got her. Take back the ones that, yeah, she wants more gifts. Take back the ones you've already given her. And
Right.
he's like, and Bashir's like, and when she leaves you, he's like, well, that's what hollow suites are for. Like, he's got a great answer for everything.
And
But that whole uh
oh my gosh, the reverse psychology of Ferengi relationships.
it's
Oh my
it's it's
gosh.
so adversarial, but I don't know why I love that so much. Like, it's just way to distill down a race and
Well,
why they're kind of just reprehensible. But I mean, especially that whole part of, oh, she's wanting you to give her more gifts. Take back the
yes, such a
ones you've already
Ferengi
given her.
answer.
Oh,
Yeah.
it really was. That was a
Yeah.
great Ferengi answer. I
Well,
loved it. I was like,
and part of
yeah,
the reason it's so fun is because I mean, if you really examine some toxic relationships out there, you can see that that works in terms of being a bad toxic relationship. There are probably people out there. There are some men who do some version of that, and it's messed up. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's how is it that that ugly jerk has that beautiful woman? Well, it's because for some reason that's how
she,
that relationship
yeah,
works.
they're
He
both
threatens.
they're both probably terribly toxic individuals. And yeah,
Yes, like she has some weird codependency on this man, and he abuses it to the full extent. And the Ferengi have actually mastered it. That is how they
so
do relationships. So
and it's such a great cultural clash, right? Because as humans, we would, well, and ideally, we would not treat our partners this way. But it also reminds me of another cultural clash that we saw several episodes ago, and it was when Garrick and Bashir were talking about lying. And Bashir tells the story of the boy who cried wolf. And remember Garrick's takeaway from the story?
yes,
He's
yeah,
like,
it's not
Are you
that you shouldn't
sure?
keep
Are you
crying
sure
wolf.
that was the story? Yeah. You sure that
Yeah,
was the moral of the tale? Because he was like, yes. And what could it have possibly been? And he's very quick, but you
never
should never
say
tell
the
the same lie
same lie
twice.
twice.
And
Yeah,
walks out. So again, this such a simple delivery of a couple of lines, and it so eloquently highlights the differences between our culture, our society, and theirs.
right,
And I love it. And this is yet another one of those instances. And I think that's why it stands out in my mind, just the way that boy who cries wolf moment stands out, because it's things that we feel like we already know and understand innately, right?
right,
So for somebody else to come in and offer such a drastically different perspective on something that we almost feel like is an instinct for us is fantastic. And I
right,
think that's why this show excels, because this is not the last time that they do this. We will see this in some other races that come up throughout Deep Space Nine.
right.
So be ready for that, And we got tastes of that when, especially with dealing with like the Klingons and stuff on Next Generation. But we get to see more things like that here in Deep Space Nine, and I think that's really because we're on a space station, and no one's going anywhere. There's no threat that they're warping into. Everything is very much an in-house, inclusive thing
Right,
that has to be dealt with.
right,
So we're going to get a lot of that.
right. Yeah. Wow.
Well, we and but I do love. I have to say before we wrap everything up here, I do love seeing the overall um, growth of the Cisco's. Jake is, kind of coming into that mantle of being a man, and as I said, Cisco is kind of learning to live again. He's not the overprotective kind of shut down father that he was before.
Yeah,
He's
he does a
really
great job of
growing.
taking Jake's advice. When Jake
Yeah,
talks to him, he doesn't go, "What do you know?" He actually like thinks on
right.
it. But keep
He
going. Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's something that we've said from the beginning. He never dismisses Jake. He never acts like he knows everything from Jake. He listens and supports his son. He protects his son too, but he also protects the sense of equality with his son. Like he's always willing to talk things out with him and listen to him with what it is he has to say. He never just dismisses him. He never is condescending to him, and he never just tries to shut Jake up. He definitely enjoys those moments as much as we do, and I think that's why um, their relationship was always rated as one of the most successful father-son relationships that we will see depicted on TV. It's frequently talked about whenever you're doing like discussions of 90s families and 90s, father figures and like that. He always, Ben Cisco always comes out pretty close to the top on that because he does such a great job of hearing his son and supporting his son. And even when his son is turned it around on him and he's giving him the advice and the lecture and everything else, he's still there for it 100%. So yeah, I absolutely love it, and I know that we're going to see more of it, and I hope everybody enjoys it as much as I do.
Sure, we do.
So final thoughts from the man who's viewing this for the first time. Final thoughts on Indiscretion.
I'll just say in general that season 4 has been a great season so far. This is again
Told you it
4
would be.
episodes in. Yeah, it's great. We've
I said
had
that. I said that we had to get to season 4. Once we get to season
yeah
4,
yeah. Worf wasn't really in this episode. He was only there to tell Kira that you have a message from someone claiming to be your friend. I love this. Such a Worf line. Like, there's someone who claims to know you. I don't trust that
always
they do.
suspicious.
Yeah, but like, and
Always
then you see the
suspicious.
guy, and the guy's, kind of a portly,
Oh,
he's
we
a
didn't talk about Rosca enough. That is Rosca Karn, and I just wanted to point out that that actor, we've actually seen him before, not on Deep Space Nine, but in Next Generation. If you can
okay,
remember all the way back to season 2 of Next Generation, he was in the episode. I think it's the War Games episode where the Enterprise has to conduct war games with the old Hathaway ship, and Riker is
okay,
put in command of the Hathaway to do the war game simulation.
right.
He is the Zakdorn, the guy who comes on to evaluate the Enterprise and Riker, and his
Oh,
name is what is his name? Korame. Karame, and he challenges and Data challenges him to a game of stratagema for the ship, and Data
okay.
gets peak performance. That's the name of the episode, peak performance. And Data challenges him, and Data loses the first round. And Pulaski and Deanna try to get him to challenge him again, but Data refuses, and Data has a lack of suffers from a lack of confidence in himself. And Picard gives the greatest life lesson advice ever in an episode. And that's where he says, it is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a failure, that is life. And then he leaves like he always does. He just sprinkles these little gems on us and then darts out the door like a
Right.
jerk. But yeah, that was the episode. Peak performance. Pulaski, Data, Riker, and Korame.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, now he's back as Raska Karn on
Gotcha.
Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
So there you go. Little
Boom.
little deep Trek history for you, going all the way back
Well,
30 some odd
I
years.
just love that he was a former he's a former smuggler. He's now a scrap metal merchant, and he knew to bribe one of the Ferengis on the other ship to know where to go looking for the next like puzzle and the clue. I
Mm.
just love that. If you understand Ferengi, all you got to do is bribe somebody, and you're good to go.
Hey, enough money, you can do anything. Enough money, you can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that is going to do it for us for this episode. Next week, we've got a very interesting episode for you to watch. You should definitely go and check that out before you come and watch us. I think that you will find it. It's probably one of the most debated episodes in all of Trekdom. I don't think there's many more that get uh yeah, called up
Okay.
as much. It's called Rejoined. This is
Rejoined.
going to be our first Dax feature of the 4th season. So yeah, just be ready for that because
Oh,
we're gonna
rejoined. I
go
can
into
see the
some
Dax.
yeah,
I can see the
yes,
Dax connection. Yeah.
yes. Again, we have no updates on new Trek stuff beyond the ending of Picard, which is next week, this week, whenever it is you listen to this. I do know that Strange New Worlds is coming back June 15th. So we'll have finally some new episodes of that show. Again, Discovery is over. It's done. They haven't released the final season yet, but this will be the fifth and final season. So I'm sure that I'll want to talk about that when it happens because I actually really enjoyed that show and um, not too happy that it's ending.
Gotcha.
But that's going to be it, and we'll get to other stuff later on. And
Quick question: do we have an update on the mug, Fire Cave's mug situation with
oh, the
Twitter?
mug. I thought you said the bug. No, um, no update on that this time, but we will do that next time.
Okay.
There's a couple of things I need to work out, but we will do that next time.
So you have to
So
watch the first episode of season 4, our first
yes, so
episode of
you
season
still
4.
have a chance to enter. But yes, you have to watch or listen to the very first episode of season 4, which was The Way of the Warrior. You can leave us a comment either through Facebook, Twitter, on the YouTube show, any of those things. And then once we winner selected, we'll reach out to you and everything else. But yeah, you still have a little bit of time because I needed to work a couple of things out. So go do it because this is it. Once all this stuff gets edited and put out there, that's it. All right. So go do it, and we'll be back in touch with you to update you on that. But as I say every single week, that's it for us now. And until next time, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.